How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of the Banker Next Door. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. Today I wanted to talk about how can your bank build a good, strong, and effective AI policy. So I came across a very interesting article from Independent Banker Magazine, and we're going to take a look at that right now. So I'm bringing this up. So this is called How to Build an AI Policy at Your Community Bank. Artificial intelligence is here to stay, whether it's generative AI, part of your bank's neural network, or both. That's why having an AI policy is important, but how you go about writing it depends on how you plan to use this technology. Now, I will tell everybody there is a link to this article in the description down below if you want to go check it out, but let's go through this. So during our interview with Greg Ohlendorf, he was interrupted with revisions to the AI policy that his community bank first laid out in 2023. My CIO just literally put an updated copy of our AI intelligence policy on my desk while we're talking with Redline Changes, said Ohlendorf, president and CEO of 201 million asset First Community Bank and Trust in Beecher, Illinois. That's how fast this is happening. So creating a robust AI policy is critical for community banks due to the sheer amount of sensitive information they handle. If vendors are injecting AI into their software, community banks need to make sure they have guardrails in place so that their customer data remains safe and the bank stays within the bounds of regulatory and legal compliance. That third-party risk becomes a big issue in terms of how these tools may or may not have some applicability inside of them and how they interact with all data, says Charles Potts, ICBA's Senior Vice President and Chief Innovation Officer. Likewise, employees using AI on their own may be putting customer information into AI applications where it might not belong. Laying out guardrails for how this technology should and should not be used can save community banks a world of hurt if something goes wrong. So, how do you get started with a community bank AI policy? Well, while there's no one standard yet of what an AI policy looks like, community banks could start by writing out where AI already is, where it can be used, and where it can't. The policy should also address how to make sure that any AI used by the bank stays within compliance of fair lending laws and how biases are not introduced into and perpetuated through an AI, even if the policy states what a third-party vendor using AI is doing to ensure both of those items. Now, another key element of a policy is deciding how employees can use AI and then training them on what they can and cannot do. Once that's established, bank leadership needs to keep reinforcing and evolving the policy. Here's what community banks can do now to understand where they're already using AI and how they can set up policies around it. So number one, figure out where AI is already being used in your bank. What are your employees doing with it? How are they using it? So the first thing to know is that even if your community bank hasn't created an AI strategy or signed contracts with AI specific vendors, the technology is already in your bank and has been for some time. Whether you call it AI or not, your card network has been using a neural network to find fraud for the last 15 years, probably longer, says Ohlendorf. Generative AI may be the newest application of the technology, but well-established technologies like neural networks and machine learning also fall under the umbrella of AI or AI-like technologies. So, community banks first need to figure out where the AI technology already is. That starts with talking to software vendors about if and where AI has been deployed in any of their solutions, says Ohlendorf. Is it on automatically, or is it a feature that I have an off switch for? For example, in doing such an audit, First Community Bank and Trust leadership made sure AI stayed turned off in a portal they used for board meetings because they didn't want that information to make its way into a large language model's pool of training data. But they also found that AI in other areas was useful to the bank. If it's on by default and you're comfortable with it and acknowledge it in some kind of governance policy, Ohlendorf says, then it's good to go. Once banks have a better idea of where AI is already being used, they can work beyond just an AI policy and look at the benefits and solutions that might be available to help the bank while making sure they align with their guidelines. Now, number two, set guidelines for bank employees' use of AI. So the next step is for community banks to learn about how their employees are using AI, whether through third-party vendors the bank already uses or through outside platforms where there is little control over what happens to information once it's into the model. Employees may be using AI tools on their own, possibly without realizing the broader implications of doing so, says Zach Duke, CEO of cybersecurity and governance business at governance platform provider Finosec. For example, someone at the bank may use a spreadsheet with customer data to create a targeted list of customers to market a certain product to. To do so, they might put that data into a third-party AI platform like ChatGPT or Gemini. Now, all of a sudden, they've taken the spreadsheet that has customer information and account information, and it's all out there, says Duke. How does the institution even know if that happened? How do they control that process? How do they make sure about having checks and balances and what is acceptable and what is not? A data governance policy should say that you don't take customer data out into external AI platforms, even if you think they're just doing something for a client or for your boss, said Devin Kinkead, executive chairman of Micronotes AI, a financial technology company offering marketing automation solutions to depository institutions. But if a community bank doesn't tell that to their employees, how would they know what they can and can't do? We've got to make them aware once we put up guardrails, says Ohlendorf. You can't just bring ChatGPT and play with it in the bank without express written permission. For example, First Community Bank and Trust talks about AI policy through everyday employee communications so that it's naturally integrated into the normal workflow of keeping workers informed. Number 3, assess the customer impact of AI. Importantly, a bank AI policy should address customer trust, especially at a time when most people are generally wary of the technology. Only 26% of consumers say they trust organizations to use AI responsibly, according to a January 2025 report by XM Institute. Microsoft, I'm looking, oh gosh, sorry, got something in my chest there. Yeah. Yeah. This leads to a dilemma, says Potts. I need to guard the hen house and protect this stuff, he explains. But what am I doing with it? And how am I communicating with my customers? The policy can also address rules for if the AI is for internal use only, or if it's being used to interact with customer data, says Duke. If it's back office and just used by the team, it's foundationally different, he notes. A policy should also include where humans are involved in the process to make sure AI results aren't inaccurate, especially if it's supposed to interact with customer data. Number 4, ensure your plan evolves as AI does. So beyond the AI banks already have, software vendors are introducing AI components into their normal workflows. For example, Microsoft 365 introduced its AI Copilot in March of 2023, and Google searches now come back with AI-generated answers. So all software companies are becoming AI-enabled, says Todd Michaud, CEO of AI-based work intelligence and automation company Hulup Automation Inc. There's no way for a community bank to not have AI somewhere in their business, no matter their best efforts. That's why it's important to regularly review and update your bank's AI policy as you adopt new technology or an existing technology is enhanced with AI. The good news, says Michaud, is that the AI evaluation process isn't much different than how banks already work with any potential technology they want to buy. You evaluate both the potential security risks and what it can do for the bank. That buying process still has to be focused on what's the value and what's the outcome, he adds. First Community Bank and Trust has gone through 5 revisions of its AI policy so far, and the policy has expanded from half a page to 3 pages. We have other policies that haven't been updated in 10 years and don't need to be, says Ohlendorf. This isn't one of those. AI is here to stay, meaning a comprehensive and evolving AI policy is critical for community banks. Kinkead points out that his company can process hundreds of millions of data pieces and make sense of them in real time because of AI. This is very real, says Kinkead. This isn't science fiction. We're doing this today, and it's all based on big data and AI. So again, I think this is great stuff here. So let's just go back real quick and go through the 4 points to what they recommend for beginning to build an AI policy. So number 1, figure out where AI is already being used in your bank. Number 2, set guidelines for bank employee use of AI. Number 3, assess the customer impact of AI. And then finally, number 4, ensure your plan evolves as AI does. And like I said, they started out with just a half page, and now it's a 3-page policy. 3 pages for a policy is nothing. I got policies in my bank that are 100 pages. But yeah, no. I thought this was a great starting point. Where do you start? How do you get started on this? What should we be thinking about with an AI policy? I guarantee you a lot of banks out there right now do not have an AI policy of any kind, and yet their employees are using AI. The vendors that they're dealing with are using AI. So like you said in the article, AI is in your company somewhere. It's in your bank somewhere, whether you maybe realize it or not. And I think what's scary is that, like, again, when you look at a company like Microsoft, with 365 and their AI Copilot, I mean, they're just turning it on and just like a vacuum, just sucking in everything that you're doing. And obviously, I would say every bank out there is still using Microsoft, still using Word and Excel and PowerPoint and Access and and Publisher so and again, so if Microsoft is just sucking all this data in, so you might be getting a lot of customer data out there that you don't even realize is getting out there. And I think that's why it's important to look at this. And I think that's a great first step, is to evaluate, well, where could AI be coming into the business? Potentially through our core system, through some of our main vendors. Look at some of the main vendors and ask them, hey, what are you doing? Have you guys implemented AI? Are you using AI in some of these things? So again, I think that's a great starting point. I think just talk to your employees. Are you using AI? How are you bringing it in? I really hope, and I know some people are, they like to just be on the cutting edge. They like to experiment and stuff, but taking customer data and loading it up into an AI so that it can, I want to target this company, spit some stuff out for me. Yeah, I mean, that might be great and it might help you, but you also might be exposing a lot of your very sensitive customer data out onto who knows where. And that's the part to me that is kind of scary. It's like you gotta, there's nothing wrong with experimenting, but you got to be very, very careful with what you're doing with a lot of this data. And I think and again, I think the board meeting, they turned off the AI on their board meeting, right? Well, did they really turn it off? Are they sure that it got, turned, because, just because these companies say, oh yeah, there's an on-off button, wink, wink, like, it may not necessarily be as you think it is. So again, I think this is just great things to point out. It's a great starting point if you want to build an AI policy. How do you get started? What are the things you should be focusing on? And again, I think every bank at this point should have an AI policy, even if it's just 2 pages. And you should be looking at what are at least start that process of examining what are your employees doing with it, what are customers doing with it, what are your vendors doing with it, and just try to get a better understanding of what's going on. So, but there you go. That's my thoughts there on building an AI, a good AI policy. So I'll wrap up by saying, if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, as I love getting back to everybody. And as always, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. I hope everyone has a great day out there, and I will see everyone again real soon. Thanks a lot.